And I am going to kick it off to Marcy, who I see at the top of my screen.
Okay. Hello, I am Marcy Williams, and I am in Caswell County with Shannon also. And I am probably jumpy and my nerves are shot because I've spent the last few days with a squirrel in my house, and I think he's out of the house. But I just did another patrol of the house. I didn't see any sight of him, but last night when a strawberry leaf flew out of my refrigerator, I jumped out of my skin like he jumped on me. So I'm just, my nerves are shot.
Oh, wow. Well, I hope that the squirrel is gone for its sake and for your sake as well. All right. Thank you for joining us, Marcy. Next,
An
Sarah.
ordeal.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. Sarah?
Good morning. I'm Sarah Hoffley. I'm with W.C. Bridge Foundation. We're headquartered in Asheville, North Carolina, but we serve the 18 westernmost counties. And I'm really excited to hear from Shannon because she's really educated our foundation through myself and the president about our rural boards of health. So I can't wait for today because every time she's on here, I learn something. I'm really excited to be here today. So that was a lift. It was a Wednesday morning, and you know the world is as it is. But I'm really excited to hear from Shannon today. Oh, I'm sorry. How about Yair Castellanos?
Yes, thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Yair Castellanos. He, him, his pronouns, and I am with ABC2, A Better Chance, A Better Community, and we are located out in northeastern North Carolina. I'm doing well today, a little tired. I've been on the road for a while, so I'll be listening in, but excited to listen to the presentation and excited to be here. I can kick it over to Randy Jordan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Randy Jordan with the North Carolina Association of Free and Charitable Clinics. And since I'm going to need to leave this meeting a little bit early, I just wanted to share that our association is completing its first year of our journey towards health equity. And we've had a really nice set of meetings with our board, our members, and now we're doing cohort meetings at the clinic level and looking forward to extending that into year 2. And how about Shakira?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shakira Mccoy. I live in Eastern North Carolina in the Nash County area, but I actually work for NCHA in Cary, North Carolina. I think I'm doing okay today. I haven't decided yet. We'll see how the day progresses. I'm doing budget sheets for my programs today, so we'll find out what I'm made of today. Let me turn it over to Kayla.
Thank you, Shakira. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayla Taylor. I am in Halifax County, North Carolina. I work for Valiant North Hospital as a community outreach coordinator, and I'm feeling all right this morning. I will pass it to Miss Donna Ledbetter.
Good morning. I'm Donna Ledbetter. I am the Director of Equity for West Marion Community Forum Incorporated. I also serve on the Dogwood Health Trust Board of Directors. I'm excited to be here. I've done some work with Shannon in Caswell County with our group, so just excited to hear her presentation. And I will pass it to Ms. Robin Seaman.
Good morning. Can y'all hear me? Okay, I had to put my earphones in, have work going on in my house. I'm Robin Seaman. I live in Watauga County, and my business, Appalachian Healthcare Training and Consulting, is basically focused on the rural Appalachian region, but in North Carolina, Western and Northwest North Carolina, and really efforts to improve health equity and just improve overall health outcomes. I'm feeling pretty good today, a little going in a whole bunch of directions and trying to reel them all in, but overall doing well. And let's see, I will pass it to Eli. Have you gone?
I have not. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eli with Guilford County Public Health. I'm the Healthy Communities Program Supervisor here, and as well as serving as the Health Equity Coordinator. I'm doing well. I appreciate the warm weather. However, it is humid here in Greensboro, North Carolina. I don't know about y'all, but I do appreciate the evenings being nice and cool. So thank you all for having me here.
Thank you, Eli. I attended college in Greensboro at UNCG, and even though I was born and raised in North Carolina, I always said the humidity around this time of year was just unbearable. So I don't think you ever get used to it. Next, I will kick it to Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Ramsey-Coleman. I'm the Healthy Eating and Nutrition Security Coordinator for Community and Clinical's Connection for the Prevention and Health Branch at the state. And I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
All right, thank you for joining us, Courtney. Carla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Carla Obial. I work at the Foundation for Health Leadership and Innovation. I work with the Community Voice pillar with Donald. We work together on that and just really appreciate your participation. He and I are always excited to learn, and I agree with you, Sarah. I can't wait to hear more from Shannon. I learn a lot from her, and I'm doing well today. Thank you.
Great, and Dr. Amelia Muse.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I work with Carla and Donald at the Foundation, working statewide on our behavioral health initiatives as the director of the Center of Excellence for Integrated Care. Great to be here this morning. I am coming off a hard day yesterday, but I'm feeling in an advocacy spirit today. So it's been a good turnaround.
Thank you for that, Amelia. And I see we have Mr. Cooper who's joined us. If you want to introduce yourself again and just let us know what organization and areas of the state that you are representing or working on behalf of. And how are you feeling today?
Okay. So first off, I'm sorry I got here a little late, y'all, but the meeting I just came from, man, I think I'm going to be getting some resources to serve more Black people in recovery. So I am lit right now. Lit meaning very excited. As far as what organization I represent, I really represent whoever is the underdog at this point in time. I'm trying to steer clear of representing organizations because sometimes representing organizations can oppress me and keep me from helping the people and saying things that I need to say. So I'm gonna say maybe I represent the National Association of Community Health Workers right now because we all about some equity. Hallelujah.
Always appreciate you and appreciate your energy and just speaking truth to power. So thank you so much for joining us. And then I would just, before I kick it to Shannon, again, I'm Donald Hughes with the Foundation for Health Leadership and Innovation. As Carla mentioned, we are just so thrilled that you all are continuing to join us for these health equity work group meetings. I do want to just share a little bit just about the process. I know like most folks have been here from the start, but we started with an analysis of kind of data. So we were looking at COVID-19 vaccine uptake. We were looking at COVID infection rates, hospitalizations, death. We looked at education, poverty levels, access to healthy foods, transportation, all of these different data points to determine what communities across our state did we feel like could use some support in the work that this group could provide around health equity. From that data analysis and just kind of landscape analysis, we were able to create a short list of about 15 or so communities that we thought might be worthy of our support and our efforts. And we kicked that information to our health equity work group, to our behavioral health work group, to our rural coalition, fighting COVID work groups to get some feedback from folks like you all who are doing the great work on the ground, who understand the challenges and needs of our communities, just to let us know, are we on the right track in terms of how our communities are responding to COVID-19? Where's their need for more resources, more support, more ideas? And from there, we were able to determine, and I'm going to just share my screen again. And I don't know if you all are able to see, but here are our 6 target communities that we were able to identify. So Caswell County, McDowell, Rutherford, Richmond, Robinson, and Duplin County. And at this phase of our work with the Health Equity Project, so we started with analyzing the data, then identifying the target communities. Now what we're doing is bringing in folks from the work groups or folks that are on the ground doing the amazing work in each of these counties for a little bit of a deeper dive. So we want to hear what are unique characteristics of the county, what projects are already happening, what work has been done around health equity, and then where there might be some gaps that still exist and opportunities for us as a foundation, for us as a work group, for our individual organizations to really play a supporting role in uplifting the voices of community members and really marrying the grassroots with the grass tops to solve some of the most important and pressing challenges of these communities. So as I mentioned, our first presentation last month was from Dr. Cherry Beasley from UNC Pembroke about Robinson County, the unique qualities, the indigenous populations there, the work that they're doing around access to healthy foods. And of all of the information that we heard, one of the things that really resonated with a few folks is this idea that there are farmers and roadside stands that exist in the community where a lot of community members, that's where they access their healthy foods. I remember as a kid, my grandmother, my mom, like we always stopped by the same roadside stand to get fresh fruit, get some produce. And what we're hoping to do with this project is to really connect those roadside farmers and farm stands to EBT and to be able to support them with purchasing the EBT equipment, being able to market to the community members that they do accept EBT to help with registration to folks so that they can access more benefits. And then also couple in some behavioral health and some other training that might be able to assist those farmers and those farm stands. So that was kind of the outcome from analyzing the data, hearing from folks that are working on the ground, and then actually having a presentation from what we consider, I guess, a subject matter expert. And what we're hoping to do is to do this for every county. And the project may look different in each county. It may be a system-wide policy effort. It may be a very specific project supporting a particular organization or population. Or it may be as simple as just sharing best practices from other communities that might be able to help address COVID-19 vaccine uptake or any other challenge or gap that may exist in that community. So I am super excited to present to you all. A lot of you know Shannon. She's been a part of this work group from the start. She really has brought a perspective that we appreciate and energy and excitement about this work. I know sometimes it can be a little daunting to live in this space and to do this work day in and day out, but I think her energy and just refreshing spirit really continues to inspire me and inspire all of us. And like Carla and Sarah have said, every time Shannon attends and we hear from her, there's something new that we learn. So I am just excited to have her share with us today about the work that they are doing in Caswell County. And Shannon, if you want, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you can tell your story better than I can. But if you also want to just let us know how you're feeling today, so that folks can just get a gauge of like how this work is inspiring you and how you're excited about all that we've been able to do and you all have been able to do. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon Mortz so she can talk about health equity and the work that's happening in Caswell County in the Dan River region.
Wow, what a build up. I thought Dr. Beasley was going to be hard enough to follow. Thank you guys very much. My name is Shannon Mortz, and I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Compassion Healthcare, which is really a fancy title for Shenanigans Coordinator. My primary job is working out in the community as project coordinator for the Caswell chapter of the Health Collaborative. And Marcy Williams, although she is very quiet in a lot of these spaces, is our data guru there from Caswell. And so Marcy is extraordinarily purposeful to this work. This morning, I am probably like most mornings, I'm a little nervous. I have found that I pretty much live on the edge of my comfort zone these days. Most days I think that's a good thing, but days like yesterday, I just needed to take a break and stay home in my garden and enjoy the day, dig in the dirt, and take in some sunshine. If you have not done that recently, please take some time to do that for yourself. Before I start, full disclosure, I love my community. I deeply, deeply love Caswell County and the people who live here. There are some incredibly resilient, amazing people who live in this community. And the information that I'm about to share with you does not always demonstrate that. And sometimes it leaves our community in a bad light. And so I just want to put that out there up front, that this is a much kinder community than what you may see represented here. Donald, do you mind if I share my screen? Ooh, at all the screens I have open.
Should have the ability to share.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Bear with me, folks. I apologize. There it is. All righty. You should be able to see my screen now, yes? Okay, perfect. For those who do not know where we are located, and this is actually crucial, Caswell County is in the north central Piedmont. As you can see there on the map, there's a square there around Caswell County. We have a population of just under 23,000. At last official count, it was 22,736, and we have a hard time keeping up with that because it's continuously dropping. We're about 63% white, 33% Black or African American. Our genders are pretty evenly split between male and female. We are, of course, a tier 1 county with an economic distress ranking of 15. And most interesting, this is one of those things that folks that don't live here don't necessarily know, is that 84% of Caswell's workforce works outside of the county. And so if you look at that map and you see those red stars are not only where our hospitals are located, but they're also where 84% of our workforce is spending the majority of their day and their shopping dollars. We have a 17.5% food insecurity rate. The youth is hovering right around 23.3%, but 32% of those are likely ineligible for federal nutrition programs. 34.5% of homeowners with mortgage, and over 60% of renters facing housing burden, paying 30% or more of their income on housing costs. And we are not particularly well educated. Of those 25 and older, only 33.2% have a high school diploma or equivalent, and 22.4% have not graduated high school. We have limited cell or internet service. We're actually caught in this really nice thing with the providers, because they say, oh, well, we offer service there, so nobody else can come in and offer service there. But they won't actually connect new folks because the infrastructure is so old that the service they have is really crappy, and they technically don't offer service. Our mental health mortality rate is significantly higher. than the state and nation. To give you an idea, the state's mortality rate is 49.4. The nation is 37.8. Caswell County's mortality rate is 54.2. As you can imagine by looking at that map, we're extremely fragmented. I often joke, without it being very funny, that Caswell County is the redheaded stepchild of the state. We truly have no region that claims us. We have multiple service regions. As you can see by the red stars, we're served by quite a few different hospitals in 6 different counties, 2 different states, and 2 Medicaid regions within the state of North Carolina. We're also right there on the cusp of the Piedmont Triad and the Triangle, and we're included in the Dan River region. And so we're constantly having to maintain relationships with all 3 because that's where our services are coming from. In that one little lonely square there, we have 1 grocery store. We have gotten some stoplights recently, so I can no longer say we only have 2 stoplights. We have quite a few now, maybe up to 4 or 5. Our largest employers within the county are local government, our school system, and the prison system. We have 2 state prisons in the county. We were historically agricultural and textile. We made our money on tobacco off the backs of enslaved people. We have an extremely high aging population with a much higher concentration of individuals aged 65 and older compared to other areas, and a higher concentration of individuals with at least 1 disability. You can see here, I thought it was funny how there was some carryover here from some of the other communities that have been selected. The change in our working age population over the past 10 years, we have continued to drop with a little bit more than 5. And we're one of the few areas right here around us with that kind of drop. And so the Health Collaborative published the region's first health equity report in 2017. That report highlighted that place matters as it explored the stark differences found at the census tract level in life expectancy, poor health outcomes, and many of the factors contributing to health, such as income, education, and employment. We saw that where you live matters, but we also knew that it wasn't just about which side of the county you live on. Why were some neighborhoods struggling more with their health than others? What other factors were at play? Well, Marcy and the Caswell County Health Department went through the 2019 community health assessment process. And this time when they asked the question, what factors most negatively impact quality of life in Caswell County? They provided a new answer choice, racism/discrimination. And so coming in at number 4, behind poor education, poor economy, and access to jobs, was racism and discrimination, listed among the leading factors negatively impacting quality of life in Caswell County. And so we wanted to ask, was racism and discrimination impacting our community's health as well? And so first, before we get to the process that you see on the screen, Marcy and I went across the county talking to all of these different community groups, asking the question, on this survey, we know that the majority of the respondents were middle-aged white women. And so when we say that racism and discrimination is negatively impacting the quality of life in Caswell County, what are we really saying? What type of discrimination? And for the first time in my adult life, what we found were that it was actually a conversation that people wanted to have. Full disclosure, I used to work at the newspaper. I was one of those dreaded journalists. I was at the local newspaper for about 5 years and loved it. And one of my editorials had been entitled, "Shh, we don't talk about it," about the racial tension here in Caswell County. And yet there we were in mixed groups with folks having a very real conversation about how racism impacted them, about how gender discrimination impacted them. And we realized it might be time to have this conversation. And so I'm going to stop sharing for 2 seconds to have some real talk. So we got to the county manager and we said, "Hey, we got a problem. Do you want to be proactive or do you want to be reactive?" Well, of course, the county manager said, "I want to be proactive." And so he agreed to take a team of 7 county employees, myself, the town manager, and one of our local pastors through a cohort with the Government Alliance for Race and Equity, GARE. That is an organization that is specifically geared to helping local governments really explore and understand the impacts that policy has, especially when equity is not centered in that policy development. And so through that process, end of 2019, first part of 2020, we developed a county racial equity plan. That plan would amend that is GARE, the Government Alliance for Race and Equity. And our county equity plan would have amended an existing health in all policies resolution to be a health and equity in all policies resolution, and would have created a health and equity in all policies task force that would be specially trained to use an equity lens to review policies and procedures with department heads, developers, and approvers to be able to really tease out who benefits and who is harmed from these things to ensure that we're centering equity. This plan would also require equity training for all county employees, as that is not currently a requirement to work with county government, just by the way. Unfortunately, before we could take that plan to the commissioners, things got really heated across our country as Mr. Floyd was murdered, and folks began to draw a lot of attention to a lot of things that needed to be discussed. And in our community, what that looked like was an argument over our statue. We have a Confederate statue on our square, and that turned into an argument over that instead of this racial equity plan, which is currently sitting on the back burner. So, anywho, just to point that out, because that's one of those things that I tend to forget to share with people. And then let me get back to my Zoom so that I can reshare. I apologize. So we thought, you know what? We need more help. While we have this extra time, let's really think about how we can best leverage the resources that we have, firm up the data that we have. We've already come out and said in public that at the end of the day, when we're looking at health inequities in Caswell County, they are due to both historic and ongoing oppression based on race and class. But were we right? And so in 2021, we teamed up with the Center for Housing and Community Studies at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. They spent a course of a year working here in the county with us. This process was overseen by a local steering committee, and the subsequent report included primary and secondary data on the social determinants of health, along with qualitative data from focus groups and interviews that were used to support and explain that data. And we mapped it. this is one of those things that has really brought a lot of conversations to the forefront in our community, because we've provided an interactive map that will allow you to lay these indicators over top of one another. And so high blood pressure and high cholesterol are among the most prevalent health conditions affecting the region. However, cancer and heart disease were the most lethal. As we go through these maps, you'll find that the highest rates of any factor are in blue, with yellow being the lowest. And so you can see here around that outside edge of the county, the higher prevalence of cancer. And it's not surprising that heart disease distribution is right around the same, with the exception of that central census tract there around Yanceyville. It's interesting how much higher that one is, and that makes a lot of sense when you see the ethnicity and race distribution. You know, we know that our own health behaviors and what happens in the clinic is only about half of what happens, of what impacts our health. And so looking at all of those other factors, we wanted to map those as well. And so looking at economic security, the median income in Caswell ranges from $36,000 and some change to $63,000 and some change, with poverty affecting right around 18 to 20% of the population. But as you can see, this is not distributed evenly at all. Income is the obvious and inescapable driver of health equity in the Dan River region. The inquiry into all aspects of healthcare led us to this over and over: primary care, mental health care, dental care, nutritious food, reliable transportation, parks and recreation, all are less available to poor people. This region is a vehicle-dependent community, particularly in Caswell County, with limited access to public transportation, sidewalks, and greenways. The average commute to work is about 32 minutes. However, over 9% of homes have no vehicles, the lowest of which is down there in that southeast corner of the county, about 5%. Up to just over 14% of homes in Yanceyville do not have access to a vehicle. About a quarter of Caswell residents rent their home, and about half of those renters are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their household income on housing expenses. And again, where you see the blue is bad here. This is where you see that higher concentration of cost burdened folks. And about 80% of the population has access to insurance, but those who are lacking insurance are consistently found in areas of higher poverty, non-white residents, and poorer health outcomes. Again, you see that dark blue there highlighted. Healthcare access isn't the only problem, and a lot of our community members fall into this category that we used to call the working poor. According to United Way, more than 30% of Caswell's households fall into what United Way has termed the ALICE threshold. That's asset limited, income constrained, employed, meaning they're making too much to qualify for most public assistance programs, but still not enough to make ends meet. And that's according to minimum self-sufficiency standards, which kind of run on the assumption that you already own a vehicle. By the time you factor in that ALICE data, more than half of the households in Caswell County are either in poverty or barely getting by. Rurality is a social determinant, and here in Caswell, it's as powerful a driver of health inequity as income. The social and physical conditions of rural life affect every dimension. There are fewer doctors, and they're harder to get to. Long distances make transportation harder, and social isolation is more pronounced, especially with the poor internet access. When we look at the concentration of African Americans in our community. You can see here where they are highly concentrated in the areas that are in the dark blue, which is a little bit different than some community, in a rural community, and all of us are familiar with rural, we don't necessarily have neighborhoods per se, right? But we do have very distinct communities across our county. And this is the way they shake out demographically. And unfortunately, as we lay these maps over top of each other, we can see some clear correlations. When we asked about some of the qualitative questions of folks, this was how they responded. It's very telling to see that overwhelmingly there were more people who identified as African American or Black who voiced issues with money to pay for medical bills or dental insurance, voiced more issues with having enough money for food or enough money for rent or mortgage. But when you looked at the questions asking about fear, in the past 12 months, how much has each of the following contributed to health problems? Fear or physical harm outside of the home, fear of harm at home, and having no place to live. White residents were much more likely to report having those feelings, which we thought was particularly telling. We saw some similar findings when we asked about discrimination experiences. Our African American or Black residents were much more likely to report feeling discriminated against among healthcare agencies or among community agencies or organizations. But our white residents were much more likely to report feeling discriminated against in local government or other settings. And we've talked a lot about poverty and geography, but the issues of racial equity really cut across these discussions. In the Dan River region and in Caswell County, the poor and the uninsured are disproportionately Black. For better or for worse, the pandemic did lay bare some of the racial inequities in the healthcare system. And it's also given us the ability to be able to recognize and acknowledge that not only do we see racial inequity in the delivery of healthcare, but also in healthcare employment as well. Some pointed to broad issues of history, politics, and culture that they claim to make it more difficult to have meaningful conversations across equity or across the board about equity. There were a lot of different comments made about local leaders and their ability to even understand this work, and a lot of comments made about local boards and their willingness to dive in. And this is where historical context is extremely crucial to understand if you're going to work in Caswell County. William Powell summed it up very well in his 1977 history of the county in this quote. But at the end of the day, bottom line is Caswell County was living high on the hog in pre-Civil War period. We were extremely wealthy as a county and controlled most of the General Assembly. In fact, it was once said that a piece of legislation could not go through Raleigh without first coming through and being approved by Caswell County. All of that ended with the end of the Civil War because their enslaved labor was suddenly stripped from them. And quite frankly, Caswell County could not dig itself out of that economic mire. It took the Depression of the 30s with its federal work programs, the trauma of World War II, and the boom years of the 50s to really awaken Caswell County. But at that point, all of those helps were extremely segregated. There's also absolutely no geographic or political reason for Caswell County to be attractive as a site for industry with no modern infrastructure. And some people are just not comfortable talking about the racial dimensions of health equity. And one of the things that is often overlooked here is that there is a very real fear here in the county. The Loyal White Knights is one of the largest and most active Klan groups in the United States, and they are based here in Pelham in Caswell County. Many people also do not know that after the Civil War, Caswell County and Alamance County were a hotbed for Klan activity. In fact, the Klan murdered a state senator, John Chicken Stevens, in 1870 in our courthouse here. No one was ever held to account for that, as you can imagine. But people who live in Caswell County tell stories of racial intimidation that takes place right up to present day, but very few people are willing to talk about these things out in the open. When they do, it's with a bitter sense of resignation that it's simply the way it is here in Caswell and that it will never change until some of the old guard dies off. We've decided we're not waiting for them to die off and have asked the folks at UNCG to create this health equity score for us to help us show how we are improving in advancing equity here in the county. As you can tell, we are not quite as bad as Danville, which last capital of the Confederacy, and some of these other areas in Pennsylvania County, Virginia, but we're close enough to where we don't want to go any further. These were things that folks listed as important when we asked them to rank what was most important: healthcare system navigation, affordable housing, healthcare policy consideration, and healthcare services access was huge. And then, of course, we always focus here locally even on those upstream impacts. We're doing a lot of work now trying to take this information out across the community. We're also working with Dr. Key from Flint, Michigan as okay, we have all of this great information, and so what do we as a community do with this now? At the end of the day, our key issues, we're really looking at those racial disparities, poverty as one of those root causes, housing quality, transportation, and insurance and health systems. There is a tremendously huge volume of work that supports this. The report itself is 462 pages with 163 maps. There is a great interactive website there that will allow you to toggle through the different data points as you'd like. We are in the process of building this out as a live database so that folks can use all of the data here and also be able to look at trends across our community. The hope is that over the next year, as we have these conversations throughout the community in tandem with our other work, that by October, we will have not only a county equity plan, but a regional equity plan to push a little further. And I'm sorry, I know that seems like a lot of information and at one time. And so what questions did it raise, or what things did you find surprising?
So Shannon, if I may, just first thank you for the presentation, that information. As you mentioned, is a lot to consume, but super powerful information as a community for you all to have, but for us as a work group to have, to think about what are some of those similar challenges that we face in our respective communities, and how are we addressing them? Are we addressing them head on, or are we taking a different approach? But So I just want to thank you for that. And one of the questions that you raised was one that I wrote on my paper. Like, we have all of this great information. So what's next? And if you wouldn't mind, I think there was a slide that was the next to last slide that had the 5, I think, priorities, but on the right side, it had a list of some very specific actions. Do you mind just spending a little time on that, just so folks could see what are some of the areas or things that you all are thinking about as you move forward with action on all of this information? You're muted.
I'm telling you, my daddy is going to be so upset he missed the muted Shannon. He always wanted me to have a mute button. That's a good question. Thank you, Donald. So the researchers came up with several actions for the region, included increased participation in current and expanded federal safety net programs, but also looking at advocacy efforts around living wage jobs and affordable housing, looking at local exclusionary zoning ordinances, expanding housing repair and weatherization programs, developing healthy homes criteria and minimum housing standards. And then one of the big ones on there also is support and expand the regional engagement to advance community health partnership. It's the REACH partnership. Mr. Cooper will be glad to know that that's our CHW work. We do have 3 community health workers here at Compassion Healthcare, and creating a regional community care network for the uninsured. And so those are some of the actions that we're looking at regionally to tackle with our partners in Danville. Locally here in Caswell County, we are, of course, continuing the community health worker program and really working closely with the health department. They're in the process of getting ready to start a strategic planning process to think about how they can best center equity in the coming years. One thing that's crucial to note, Danville has a casino coming in 2024, a $500 million casino. This is a huge casino across the state line that we get no tax breaks from. Virginia has also legalized recreational marijuana. And so, as you can imagine, the health and criminal justice outcomes down here in the county are going to be significant if we're not planning ahead. And unfortunately, right now, we are not doing a lot of planning. And so, over the next year, our focus is really to continue what we kicked off on in February. February 15th, we had an event in High Rock community, which is actually where Donna came with her group from West Marion. Came down to work with some folks in the High Rock community for us. But at the High Rock community, we kicked off our health equity report year, so to speak, with a gathering of folks and a panel with Dr. Stephen Seals with UNCG and Deborah Maxwell, the president of the state branch of the NAACP, to have a conversation about what the health equity report meant, what it showed, but also how everyday community members could get involved. And at this point, our primary focus is really building the capacity of our local partners to be able to have these conversations. First and foremost, we have to give them that platform to be able to have these conversations in a safe place. We've just launched a women's leadership group because we have a lot of misogyny going on as well. And of course, there's a lot of intersection there between race and gender. There is some different trainings and things like that that we're hoping to incorporate in with Dr. Key and looking at caucused groups here at the medical center. We have a pretty big staff of about 70, 75. And really looking at how we can couple this, and this is Marcy's brilliance, looking at how we can couple this with trauma-informed approaches. As we go through this work, what we learn repeatedly is that it's not just about equity. Dr. Key talks about what he has developed, the Key model, that at the end of the day, this all comes back to how we are placing value on other human beings. How are we assigning that value? And so we are really trying to embrace some trauma-informed approaches, and looking at how that generational trauma, on top of the individual trauma, that generational and community level trauma, how we can begin healing some of that as we center equity. And if folks have ideas on how to do that well, let us know. We are open for suggestions. At this point, we're doing the spaghetti method. You throw it up and you see what sticks and what community members like. Right now, they are flocking towards 2 books. Dr. King's last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, which we're trying to use as a foundational text, and My Grandmother's Hands also.
Great. Are there questions or just thoughts or reflections on Shannon's presentation and the work that, the amazing work that they've done around health equity in Caswell County?
I have a question. Shannon, how did the partnership with UNCG start? We have, in Western North Carolina, we have a couple of higher education entities, but working out those partnerships, particularly with philanthropy, seems to be a little more challenging than it should be, because I mean, those maps alone, really educating me or the community about where do you get sick, or where is the higher prevalence of cancer. I mean, that is, wow, that was really impactful. So how did you all start that?
We got lucky. A lot of what's happened here in Caswell County is 200 years of bad luck catching up to us, and it finally becomes our time. And so honestly, it was a perfect storm. One of our program officers at Danville Regional Foundation went through a master's level class with Dr. Stephen Seals, who was over the center there at UNCG. And so she had an in with him, and knew that that was work that they were interested in. And so that was one of those things where she just happened to know somebody who was interested in that and wanting to move that forward. Interestingly enough, Dr. Seals has now moved on with, I think he's with one of the state offices now. But this is still work that that team is strongly interested in, and we'd be happy to connect you with him if anybody would like that, because they were amazing to work with, because they understood what we were looking for. We had a report. We needed more depth around the report, and we needed to make sure that we weren't pushing the narrative the way we wanted it to go, and that it was truly what that we were comparing apples to apples. And they knew that we wanted it to be actionable, that we needed it to be interactive, we needed it to be useful, we needed to be able to really drill down as far as we could, because you know, our zip codes are strange here. Many of our zip codes belong to other counties, and so zip code level data is pointless for us. But that census tract level data was crucial. And it was also a very affirming process, because somebody from outside of the area came in And one of the very first things they said was, oh man, do these people in Raleigh and all these other places who are making all these big decisions, do they have any idea what y'all are dealing with here? No, they do not.
Well, and I'll be really frank with you. One of the largest counties in our area, Buncombe County, has declared racism as a public health crisis probably about 18 months ago, and we have yet to develop actionable action. So I thank you, Donald, for pointing that out, because we're in that same place where, there was a movement and we gave some attention, but then when it really came to changing policy, backing it up with money, changing decisions, we're not there yet. So that education for us would be important too, because we don't know census tract level data. We just don't. I'm being really frank with you. We don't. We might look at it for a specific project, but regionally, we don't have anything like your maps.
That was where we were. Every conversation we were having came back to, we don't have the data. Sure would be nice if we had this data. Sure would be nice if we knew this. Sure would be nice if we had an equity index. Something beyond the county health rankings and things like that. And so they spent a lot of time doing high level mathematic data nerd stuff that is way beyond my head to come up with that health equity score, but they seem to feel like it's pretty solid. And two, one of the things that we really liked about the idea of, and they're still working on transitioning it to a dashboard for us, is so that we could see trends and we could see what happens here when you change something here. Because, often it's those unintended consequences that we don't necessarily prepare for. Or we can't then go back later and say, no, remember, there is a direct correlation to when this policy changed that this happened. And so now we feel like we've got a pretty good base of people who are kind of pushing this work and really ingrained in this work across different sectors. Like I say, over the next year, we're going to do some very sector specific organization and planning and education. And while we're pulling together these smaller groups and having these conversations about what does this look like in your world? And what does ideal state look like? Where can we move forward so that hopefully we have that community level plan that will allow us that roadmap to really drive forward and keep us focused. And I think, Donald, I shared that information for Dr. Stills with you as well, but I think he has a new email address, so I'll share that.
Great, thank you. Are there any additional questions or, again, thoughts or reflections?
Yeah, I was just really shocked at the visibility of the loyal white knights. Is that what they were called? Now, you're never going to be able to get rid of the discrimination, and racism there if they're not dealt with. So is there a plan to deal with that at all, or?
So they're a funny group of folks, these folks. They march everywhere but Caswell. So they were marching in Charlottesville, that they march in Pittsburgh a lot. They marched down in Raleigh. They were going to march in Pelham a couple of years ago, but they had some anti-protesters show up. And so they changed gears last minute and ran to Roxborough instead. Right now, we have reason to believe that there is some law enforcement who is trying to deal with that issue. And so we are trying not to engage, and frankly, we are trying not to center them. We are trying to center the people of Caswell and the building of systems in spite of. And frankly, the less attention we pay to them and the less we even breathe their name internally to this county, the safer we are. You know, the visibility of the Klan in Caswell doesn't look like marches. The last march that we had was in 92. And I know some people who aren't from here are like, oh my God, 92, that really wasn't that long ago. That was the last march that we had. And interestingly enough, it ended up on school grounds. How does that happen? So anywho, the white robes and the crosses, that's not a huge visible thing here. What is a visible thing is if you're not from here and you come into downtown Yanceyville and you go into a couple of businesses and you walk around downtown any length of time, you come out and you go, and I say this because I have been told this multiple times before, and Donald's family is from here and he's nodding his head because he knows what I'm getting ready to say. Black folk around here sure do know their place. Yes, they do, along with any white folk who like black folk. And why do we know our place? Because we, as I told the Board of Commissioners not long ago, we went to school here. We grew up on the school bus, listening to people brag about what their daddies and uncles were doing at the Klan meetings on the weekends. And we know what their daddies and uncles teach and what boards they sit on. And so the bigger issue now is that there is what I call the unhooded Klan, who operate very loud and proud within our local government, to where when any local government employee says, you know, we might want to have racial equity training. Oh my God, they've got to be fired. We're going to lead a public campaign against them. They're going to have to be fired. Oh, Mrs. Smith went to the school board to say something about little Johnny not being treated appropriately. Psst, buddy, little Johnny's teacher next year, he's going to have to worry about being treated appropriately because he's going to get expelled. It's that kind of small town bully intimidation tactics. It's having old white men go up to our town manager, who is a Black female, first of both for our town, and say, you better be real careful walking out of here at night by yourself, young lady. You know it's not safe for you around here right now. It's that. And so with that being as ambiguous and as ugly as it is, we have decided that the only way that we can combat that is to not focus on that, to not give that the power by focusing on it, to instead focus on what we as individual leaders in this county need to be able to step into our own power and claim what we need for our own health and well-being, so that we can then help our community members do the same, to create those spaces where you can step into your power here and say what you need to say. And this is why partnerships like this are so important to Caswell, because you saw our demographics. We're 60-some% white. Politically, we're about half and half, Republican versus Democrat. But a lot of our Democrats are what I consider to be Dixiecrats. So they're not coming to the rescue of anybody that's not white, because that does not meet with their game plan either. And these folks have been very clear about this. And so the only thing that we can do is to rise up instead, right, to continue to stand firm. and refuse to be distracted, kind of like the statue. Personally, I don't care about the statue. He doesn't hire people, he doesn't fire people, he doesn't make policy. But a lot of folks in this county were wanting to argue about that statue because he doesn't make policy. That was a total distraction tactic. And incidentally, the same folks who were going, oh, you can't let them take down your statue, were the same folks going, don't you let them pass zoning and tell you what to do with your property. We don't need zoning. They can't tell us what to do with our property. And so they beat down zoning too. And we all know that zoning is one of the best protectors of health, especially when you have a casino coming in.
That book, Dr. King's book, is exactly to that. Don't let the chaos distract from what the main goal is. And, you know, even to what Philip is talking about with organizations, you know, organizations have their own issues with that, maintaining structures. How are we maintaining that? Where is the money going? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I put in the chat, I appreciate your transparency, Shannon. And as you mentioned, my family is from Yanceyville, from Caswell County and Person County. So my parents and grandparents and cousins and myself have lived these experiences. I mean, it was one of the things that I wrote down in terms of kind of like what I took from your presentation. The first was what was next, but then the second point I wrote down was race, racism, and discrimination, and the implications, excuse me, on the work that we're doing. And I think Philip put in the chat that racism is a public health crisis. And I think we have to keep that at the forefront of the work we're doing and think about what does it mean in communities. You made a great point, and I texted Carla while this was going on, and I said something along the lines that bringing in a group like GARE to help folks with race and equity in targeted communities could be really helpful. But when you just mentioned how government employees, if they spearhead and lead these efforts, how they may become the targets of efforts to get them fired. So I do see a space for organizations like the foundation to be able to show up in communities, and that way folks who are there don't have to take the heat when it comes to trying to get information out and to really have folks trained and galvanized around efforts like this. So I truly appreciate what you just shared, Shannon. Are there any other thoughts or questions? And if not, go ahead.
Shannon, I really appreciate everything you shared. My brain is exploding with all the information and looking forward to the recording to go back and digest some. But I'm really, maybe it's my naive state, I'm just really blown away by whatever this group is, semi-clan, whatever they are, that they're in existence that strongly. But question, you've mentioned both of the books you mentioned that you were using, like how are you using those? Who's reading them? How are you doing that?
So after our February 15th event, I just kind of sprinkled them around as after event gifts because I wanted to see if people enjoyed them. And what I discovered is that we have a large population of folks who identify as Black or African American in our healthcare workers, actually, who really latched on to my grandmother's hands. And so we went to them and said, hey, would you like to have a conversation about this book? Would you like to come together around a meal and talk about what you're learning? And they said yes. And so we're getting ready to schedule a couple of lunches for them to come together with an LCSW that is part of our partnership to really go through that book a little bit. And then we had several white folks who really kind of picked up on the Dr. King book and go, wait, this makes a whole lot of sense. This could have been written yesterday. We need to really be thinking about this. And so again, it's, well, hey, would you like to come together and have dinner one night and have a conversation about this? And so at this point, we have 2 very small little reading groups. And then there's a very small little contingent of us who have been going through some affinity group training, just to kind of help us a little bit more thinking through some of those caucus spaces and what that looks like. I am hoping that we can get the library and the Friends of the Library to do a community read with us on one, if not both of those books. But again, given some folks and their concerns about upsetting the wrong people, that may or may not happen. So again, we get it done however, however we can.
Yeah, that's great. Those are great ideas, just to really engage people in the community.
Oh, and there's some a United Methodist pastor who is going to be leading some discussions as well, because she already has a group that's pulled together. And that's really, you know, we go where it's easy. You know, we go where it's easy and where folks are already trying to come together and do something. And it's nice because COVID actually gave us the ability to really focus on some of those one-on-one conversations and one-on-one relationships a little bit more, which is crucial. And I think that's something that's very important also, is that, so I'm a type A person. And so not having everything planned out to the detail just drives me crazy, hence that living at the edge of my comfort zone thing. But we wanted very much, this is community-centered health. And we can't make plans for our community until we know what our community needs. And so, you know, trying to remain flexible enough to pivot when we need to pivot while still keeping those big, broad goals in mind can be tricky. And we often have way more balls in the air being juggled at a time than what we need, because we're tending to so many small groups, just trying to meet folks where they are.
Shannon, I just want to, again, thank you so much for leading this discussion today. It's been very emotional. I'm inspired by the work that you all are doing. Yeah, and it really is just kind of hard to put words around it because it has been so moving today, but I do want to thank you and thank everyone for just your questions, your thoughts, and your insights. So we're going to continue to have these conversations, continue to figure out what the work looks like and how this work group and the foundation can support what you're doing in Caswell County and in communities across the state. So I just appreciate you personally and on behalf of the foundation for giving us of your time today to lead this discussion. So thank you.
Thank y'all for not leaving us out here doing this on our own. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I just want to, in the last couple of minutes we have with each other, I want to just open up and give space for folks. If you all have any events that are upcoming, conferences, trainings, or any information that you want to share on the line or drop in the chat, please feel free to jump in at this time.
Donald, I just want to thank Shannon again and just echo your words at just how much we appreciate you sharing with us, your transparency. And, you know, we applaud you and the others in Caswell County, and I think we'll learn a lot as we move forward. Switching gears, and it's hard to do at this time, but I did want to say to the group that the community voice pillar work that Donald and I are leading at the foundation for the first time includes advocacy. It's the first year that we are bringing members of the North Carolina Rural Health Association together to find out what issues that are top of mind that they would like to really support. And then we will be working with lawmakers in Raleigh. And so to launch, I just gave it away, to launch our new name, our North Carolina Rural Health Leadership Alliance will have a name change. We are the North Carolina Rural Health Association. So we've always been that with an odd name. So we think simple is better. Folks are able to understand it, but we will launch the new name of the association. But it's not only a name, it's a change in the organization in that historically it has always really been made up of health leaders representing statewide organizations. And while we think that is so valuable, we also think that we have to have leaders from communities such as yourself, Shannon, and others here on this call, that we need the grass tops and the grassroots to talk to one another in order to really know what are the issues and challenges of our rural communities. And so in that spirit, we're going to have a legislative breakfast on June 9th. You will receive a save the date and an invitation, but I'd like to just go ahead and announce that. It's early morning. So if it's from 7 to 9 and it's at the Museum of History, we will serve biscuits. I'm really excited about that because I love to eat. And Donald makes fun of me for that. But anyway, if you're out of town but would like to come support this day, we know that Medicaid expansion is something that our organization wants to see happen. We know broadband workforce issues are something that we're going to be talking about. Please let Donald know or myself. We may be able to provide some assistance for your travel, maybe your mileage to get to Raleigh. We know, again, it's early morning, but we would really love to have a show for legislators that we are all working together and that we're really going to be moving forward and talking to them about issues that come from the community that are important. And so, Shannon, it's like the work in Caswell County. There's a lot to be done. And we just all need to work together. So I'd love to just invite you now and put that on your calendar, and we'd love to have you. And in saying that, we'd love to have you as members of the North Carolina Rural Health Association.
Thank you so much for that, Carla. And yes, Robin, the North Carolina Rural Health Leadership Alliance will be transitioning to the North Carolina Rural Health Association. And to Sarah's point, this is a more inclusive, not just name, but organization that really wants to bring community-based organizations. We want to bring folks that are working outside of the health space, providers to the table to really start having these in-depth conversations about the needs of our community. So we would, again, love to have everyone Thursday, June 9th for our legislative breakfast, 7 to 9 a.m. And one additional thing, Carla, that we discussed is that this may be an opportunity for folks to also schedule some meetings with their representatives and their senators. So if you want us to help you all, if you're able to make it down on June 9th to set up some of those meetings, we are more than happy to assist in scheduling that and just making sure that we can get in front of the folks that are making decisions about our rural communities. And I see there are a couple of additional events that are in the chat. So the Western North Carolina Bridge Foundation, they're having their first open house in a new building May 26th. So if folks want to email me at donald.hughes@foundationhli.org with these informations, we'll be able to send them out in the recap. I would love to include anything that you all have going on. Also, West Marion Community Forum will have a Juneteenth festival, a 3-day Juneteenth festival, June 17th through 19th. So that I know will be an exciting event. And then I just want to drop in the chat, North Carolina, NC Care 360 is a platform that is a part of the foundation. We manage it. And some folks may be aware that there was a funding opportunity a month or so ago to help with onboarding new organizations or expanding the use of NC Care 360. And it focused on the Triangle region, but that funding, we have some additional funding, and it's expanding our efforts to counties in the triad, so Alamance, Caswell, Chatham, Davidson, Forsyth, Guilford, Orange, Randolph, and Rockingham. And there are individual community-based organization grants that range from $25,000 to $100,000 that really are about helping organizations actually begin to utilize NC Care 360 if they aren't using, or to increase your use of NC Care 360. And to foster these partnerships so that folks, if they come to a food bank, they can still get connected to housing resources, or they can get connected to utilities assistance that they might need without having to search high and low and figure out what's available in their community. So I'm going to drop this funding opportunity link in the chat. And again, I will send it out as a recap from this meeting to everyone so that you all can have it. And then Carla, do you want to mention the Bernstein Fellows? Are we still accepting applications for that?
Yes, we are. The applications are being accepted through, I believe it's May 14th, May 14th, May 15th. My brain can't remember. I think it's May 14th. If folks have questions about that, also just send me an email and we can jump on the phone and talk. I had a few questions of different aspects of the application, so I'd be glad at any time to talk to folks about that.
Awesome, and I just dropped that in the chat as well. So are there any last minute events, updates, comments, thoughts before we wrap up? This has just been a great meeting, and yeah, I'm inspired and I'm moved. All right, if not, thank you so much again, Shannon. Thank everyone for hanging in there with us today for this meeting. We look forward to our next monthly meeting. We'll make sure that we send out, I know that folks, when they completed the Zoom registration, it gave you an option for all of the subsequent meetings for the rest of the year, but we'll also send out a calendar invite just so you'll have that reminder in addition to the Zoom link. But again, I just thank you all for your commitment to your respective communities, to the state of North Carolina, and to this work group. And I look forward to seeing you all next month or sooner. Take care.
Thank you, Donald.
Week,
Thanks,
everyone.
Donald. Y'all have a good one. Bye.